So, thank you so much for scheduling a time with me for me to interview you. And so, I really would love for you to introduce yourself to the audience and tell us who you are and what you're about.
Sure. My name is DeLonda Owens Tucker. I am a MS warrior of 13 years this year. I am a wife, a mother. I am also a certified marriage and life coach. I am also a marriage and MS ambassador with We Are Ill. It's a nonprofit organization geared to Black women with MS. And I'm also a district activist leader with the National Multiple Sclerosis Society.
Oh, so tell me, tell me a little bit about your story, right? So 13 years. Tell me what life was like before. What did life, yeah, what was like before you got the diagnosis? Or I don't like calling things illnesses. There's a gift and
Yeah,
so tell me a little bit about life before. Like what was
sure.
life like before?
So life was busy. I was a busy mom. I had just recently gotten married
Okay.
in 2010, and life was good. My husband and I were, blending a family of three and just enjoying newlywed, life. And I started to have these symptoms of simple complex partial seizures, is what I got diagnosed with. And it would be where the entire left side of my body would just go without mobility for about 30 to 40 seconds. So if I was talking, I would have to stop, or it would stop me, I should say. If I had anything in my hand, it would just drop. And once the episode was gone, after about 40 seconds, my mobility came back, the ability to speak as well. So once I got that under control with my neurologist, I'm good for 2 years. So we're fast forward to 2012. I believe it's around my birthday, so around August this month. And I started to have the episodes again after 2 years of it being stable. But this time, I was experiencing pain in the back of my head. I knew immediately something was wrong because every partial seizure would not have any pain associated with it. So I knew something was wrong. And I told my husband, I said, honey, something's wrong. I said, I'm experiencing pain in the back of my head now with the episodes. And so we went to the neurologist. Make a long story short, I went through about 3 to 4 weeks of intense testing, MRIs, EKGs, cardiograms, all these blood tests. And then the very last thing that I had to take, I took a lumbar puncture. And that procedure, yeah, was not very enjoyable. So after that last procedure, go back to the neurologist, and he's like, yeah, it's confirmed. You have relapsing remittance multiple sclerosis. And I'm literally sitting there. My husband is just sitting there like, we're looking like zombies because we're like, yeah, we're not here, or we don't understand nothing that you're
Right.
saying. So scary. Of course, you can probably imagine the room was so quiet. And then he's like, well, let me get you set up for 4 weeks, not 4 weeks, 4 days of intense steroid treatment. He said, you'll be starting tomorrow. And I'm just like, give me can you pump your brakes, sir? And he just went on about, hey, we're going to do the steroids, get your body prepared for the disease modifying therapy that we're going to start. Now we leave, we're in the car, quiet. And then I start saying, first of all, what is MS?
Right.
And I'm like, I've heard of multiple sclerosis with,
Right.
Rich Pryor, with Montel Williams,
Right.
but I knew no one close to me, nobody on either side of my family, my mom's side, my father's side, nobody even on my husband's side that dealt with anything like that. So
Mhm.
we're immediately, of course, isolated. We know nothing. And so my husband says, we need to probably get a second opinion.
Right.
One of the best, pieces of advice my husband could give me. And we did just that. And so before we even started any disease modifying therapy that he did not talk about, I knew nothing. So we got another appointment with a neurologist, and it ended up being the best decision ever. This neurologist was also the CEO of the Center for Neurological Diseases in West Dallas, Wisconsin, where I am from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And so it was night and day by the time I met him. I left the doctor's appointment feeling empowered, feeling supported, feeling heard. And I was, filled with about a packet about this big, full of information about seminars, workshops, and what MS is.
Okay.
And we felt so much better. Talk about night and day. But still, dealing with a diagnosis you know nothing about,
Right.
nothing in your family. We just literally dived into trying to figure out what MS is, the symptoms, what it's, how it's caused. We went to every seminar, we went to every workshop. We flooded our children at that time. They were much younger,
Right.
with information as a result to, you know, just everybody getting on the same page.
Right.
And I'll never forget my very first thing saying to my husband and the neurologist, the second one. I said, "Am I going to die?" And he said, "Oh my gosh." He said, "No, honey, you're not going to die. However, there are instances where at the end or the very close end of your disease, you might be in a wheelchair."
Right.
And that was devastating. Again, I'm 2 years into a new marriage,
Right.
new blended family, which already comes with your set of issues, problems, how to blend, and now you have added a incurable disease to your new sick wife.
Yeah. So it's interesting to hear, right? You had a new life experience, right? Blending
Yeah.
family, being busy, blending the family,
Yes.
and then you and your new husband coming into a space of information, not knowing. And what I'm hearing is like your husband was like, "Hey, let's get a second opinion." And
Yeah.
then it shifted, right? It's almost like, "Hey, I
Yeah.
got information."
Yep.
Um, and then it looked at, okay, what do we need to do? How do we educate ourselves? And so you
Absolutely.
said something that I think COVID did to us, even before, there was community, but there became isolation. And so you said,
Yes.
I felt,
Yeah.
we felt isolated, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so tell me a little bit now, right, where you are in your journey, because when you introduced yourself, there was a lot of like MS advocate, like there's things that,
Yeah.
because what I'm hearing is, hey, there has to be a community. And how, if you're an MS advocate, there's things that you are really putting into the community, right?
Sure.
So people are not isolated. There's things that you're doing. So tell me a little bit about how you came out of isolation, right, with the diagnosis, and kind of how did you navigate that space? Because when you got that diagnosis, how were people around you? Because I know we talked a little bit about that
Mhm.
when we talked, and I think that everybody has a different journey, right? Depending
Yeah.
on what environments and communities you are in before the
Sure.
diagnosis, when you get the diagnosis, kind of how they may make you feel isolated,
Yeah,
right? And so I
absolutely.
just want you to share a little bit about that.
So my journey was interesting. Right before I think the switch kind of, came on to, hey, this isn't going to, this shouldn't define you.
Right,
I'm the youngest of six and of six siblings, and all of them, so my five siblings were very, I'll say, dumb to the fact of what MS was. Like I said, there's no one in our family
right,
that knew anything about it. So me trying to explain the symptoms, what's going on, and let's not forget to mention it's an invisible disease. So everything's going on internally. So I'm being looked at like, well, you look great.
right.
Is something really going on? Are you really sick? And so, that was very frustrating
Mhm.
because that is when I started to feel even more isolated, like no one understands. I started going through a heavy depression where I literally just wanted to run my car off the bridge. We have a huge bridge in Wisconsin. I was just like, I just really feel like it would be just so much better if I would just, die, because I'm going to probably die from complications anyway. And found out that that was a side effect of one of my medications. So got knowledge in regards to that, and right, got regulated. And that is when I was like, yes, this is not going to control my life. I'm fighting back. And my fighting back was, I'm talking about diving in, trying to figure out how can I advocate?
Right.
What is the face of MS? And of course, it's different for everyone. I was committed to showing the world and my family,
Right.
and friends, that this is the new face of MS. It's not what you thought it was. And all disabilities does not consist of walking aids,
Right.
because I wasn't on a walking cane or walker, or wasn't in a wheelchair or anything like that. And so I was determined. My husband and I were determined. And so we just flooded ourselves with information, information, information. And then I started to have relapses. And those relapses were the worst I could ever experience. And so when you have a relapse with relapsing remittance, multiple sclerosis, it is a time where there is an entire influx of your symptoms. So whether there's blurry eyes, whether I mean, not eyes, but blurry vision, just a lot of pain, your legs don't work, brain fog, back spasms, just an influx of all of these symptoms. And if you were doing good, let's just say I was just doing maybe 60%, but that's good, it drops you all the way back down to ground zero. So it is as if you were just diagnosed all over again, and you have to get strengthened and get strong all over again. That's the type of MS that I have. And so that itself was a journey. I've had 13 relapses since 2012. And my very last one was 2016.
Oh yes.
And it was right before, yeah, right before I relocated, and I was in a wheelchair. And so now all of a sudden everybody's like, oh my God. But I'm like, I've had it since 2012. Like, really? And so I could not walk. I lost all mobility in my legs and my upper extremities, and had to go to physical therapy. Graduated from a wheelchair to a walker to a cane, and then of course I came all the way back. But after that, when I was like, we're leaving, we are leaving Wisconsin, because it did have a enormous effect
Okay.
on me. And so I would have to say moving to Arizona was when I became this, I am determined to live my best life despite MS. And I was like, MS is not going to define me. And I came to Arizona with a mission. And here I am. I'm working with, National Multiple Sclerosis Society as a district activist leader. And, what that is we go before legislators, senators, representatives, and I advocate for those who have MS like myself. And we are pushing policies like, we need research funding,
Right.
or, we have a policy that we actually won. It was a policy where there would be no medication changing, because sometimes these pharmacy benefit managers, they get lots of money for medicine. And if you're on a disease modifying therapy treatment that's working, they have the ability to take you off and give you what they feel is best, because it's with their insurance. Yeah, it's just stupidity.
Skirt, skirt. Let's
I know I said a
rewind.
whole
Let
bunch.
hold on. Let's rewind and press play. Go back to this policy. So talk a little bit about that. And so this is one of the reasons that I have this show, right? Of people understanding the powers that
Yeah,
be. So go
yes.
and talk to me a little bit about that with the medication and the policy. What the part of all the little things that the big things that you do. Talk to me a
Yeah.
little bit about that. Go. I want to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So there is policies that are in place by our senators, people that we vote in, House of Representatives, legislators that make all of the decisions that we invite in and vote in. And then they also make decisions with several different companies behind the scene. Something like a medication reversal, or I think it's medication change with pharmacy benefit managers. So these pharmaceutical companies, they are not medical doctors. They're not even in the medical field, but they are making decisions based on what they feel like can make them more money. So let's say, for instance, I was on my first disease modifying treatment was Tysabri. Now, if a pharmaceutical company says, hey, it's not really making us money, we're switching it. Everybody that has this insurance will now have to get on the one that's making us money. And it does not matter if you're doing well or doing poorly. You are actually in the hands of pharmaceutical companies. And additionally, your neurologist is in partnership with
With
pharmaceutical companies as well, because they promote
it, yes.
different
Yeah.
medications. Doesn't matter if it doesn't work well or anything. And I happen to be one that Tysabri didn't work well for me, but I had to be on it for 5 years. And that's why I was experiencing
Yeah.
relapse after relapse. And then I tested positive for the brain infection, PML, that you can actually die from. And so once I got positive with that, my doctor's like, no, we've got to switch you.
Okay.
So
So
that's the advocacy that I am
right.
so fiercely committed, to doing. And that's just one policy, that we have. One, which is thankful, just so thankful to that. So if a patient is on a DMT that's working, the insurance companies cannot mess with you, because it's been passed that you cannot, it's against the law now for you to change medications.
Wow. So
Yeah.
I love doing these interviews because I get to learn a lot, right? I get to learn a lot.
Yeah.
And so my question to you is kind of what is your day right now? Because you said you haven't relapsed since 2016, and I'm
Yeah.
that's a blessing. What does
Yes,
your
it is.
day-to-day look like now? What is that navigating? I know I've done a little research around MS, so there's like different types of drugs and how long you
Yeah.
take it. Somebody could get an infusion or a shot today and it's a month. So kind of how has life changed since you've been in Arizona? What does that look like? And kind of, you know, I I often sing with my friends sometimes, like I have my good days, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so just what does that look like now to hear earlier
Yeah.
that you might be at 65, 70, but your relapse
Yeah.
would take you back to zero. And I could imagine
Yeah.
where you're like, I want to drive off the bridge because
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
to zero and then there's depression.
Hmm.
What is life?
Yeah.
What is life? And
Yeah.
so there sounds like you made so many pivots. And my thing is
Yeah.
now of what is your day to day and kind of what is the light that keeps shining and you keep shining? Like what keeps you moving and grooving now?
Well, I'll start by saying once I relocated to Arizona, so much opened up for me.
Mhm.
My past neurologist in Wisconsin introduced me to one of his colleagues in Arizona. Happened to be one of the best people and decisions I could ever make. So that was, a game changer. Getting another neurologist, and I don't want to say fortunately for me, he was even better than the neurologist I had in Wisconsin. So I was just like, oh, I am straight winning, right? And so I began this journey of being better, becoming better. And because I am a believer, I came up with my own motto. Soon as I got to Arizona and I met this neurologist, he gave me so much hope. I was like, you know what? My new motto is going to be MS does not define me, but my faith does. And so I decided to just exercise my faith. What
Right.
faith is not what you see, but it's what you hope for. And
Amen.
so I was like, well, I'm hoping to be healed. I'm hoping to walk better. I'm hoping to have a better life. And so I exercised my faith even the days where I couldn't get out of bed.
Yeah.
But I was determined. I was like, you know what? I'm going to start exercising. I hate exercise. I hate the gym. I hate sweat. I hate to be around people that sweat. So that was a challenge. I was like, okay, maybe I'll work out at home. But I had to push myself. And my husband was an amazing coach for me. We started working out together, just started doing walking first.
Right.
And I was able to walk and started doing a mile. And then I started doing 2 miles. And then I started doing 3 miles. And I started taking the advice of this neurologist. He changed some vitamin supplements. I started feeling incredibly better. I didn't know that my vitamin D level was severely low. Yeah, you would think they
S-
would have said something.
It okay. So I've been doing some research, and I had interviewed this
Yeah,
woman, and I found out that people who have MS, what like my average, the average that just somebody who doesn't have it, you guys have to
yes,
have it like 10 times what, and a lot of
absolutely.
doctors don't know that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's really interesting, Marsha, because you're supposed to have consistent blood work that goes on, just routinely when right before you take your treatment. And so I was, but I don't know if, my past neurologist just didn't know.
Right.
I was on vitamin D, but it just wasn't helping. So by the time I get to Arizona, this neurologist was like, this vitamin D supplement you've been taking, which was like maybe 250. He was like, that's kind of like baby aspirin. And I'm looking like what he said. The first thing I'm going to do is jump. You're going to have to go up. And I went to 5,000 to 10,000 ICUs. And I'm telling you, I promise you, Marsha, I felt better the exact
Yeah.
next day. And I'm like, all because of a vitamin D? But it's just having someone you can partner with your,
Right.
your medical staff. It's really a partnership. And I wanted a partnership. And so we partner. We were like, hey, this doesn't work well. This has got to work. So we just
Right.
began to partner together, and it's become night and day. I exercise, work out. I love to work out now. And I'm active.
Right.
I'm not sitting in the house and letting life pass me by. No, I am determined to live, and I mean that. And so I made a commitment that if I could do it, I'm going to help someone else do it, because I'm like, I'm a face of MS. It may not look like the MS that you see, but I
Right.
wanted to show people this is a new face of
Mm.
what MS looks like. And it looks like winning. It looks like I'm living, I'm enjoying my children, I'm enjoying life, my husband, I am vacationing. I am not letting this define me. My faith is going to define me.
That is amazing. That's amazing. So my question for you, because you've been dropping some jewels, right? And this is one of the reason, one of the reasons that I wanted to start really speaking to people who have a story, who's navigating a gift, an illness, right? Something their
Yeah.
diagnoses, right? Because people can find gems in other people's stories,
Yeah.
able to relate. And I thank you so much for being transparent of saying, hey, I wanted to drive off this bridge, right? And
Mhm.
then to make this pivot around, okay, I gotta leave. We gotta go to Arizona.
Yeah.
And when you first got the diagnosis, you was like, hold on, wait, I don't have information. Because a lot of
Yeah.
times we've been taught in the medical space that we have to trust this doctor, this provider. They're the
Oh my gosh. That's so true.
yeah. And so to hear you like, hold on, you're telling me we're about to do like get my body ready for like this treatment. I don't even know
Hmm.
what it is. And so to
Exactly.
hear you say, and for your husband to say, hey, let's get a second opinion. It's really big. And I think sometimes
Yeah.
when there is a diagnosis or when they say, hey, your numbers look like this, we're a little bit scared because it's like, well, they know this, but even when
Yes.
you right? But even when you said, "Hey, my other neurologist wasn't checking for my vitamin D," this neurologist that I came to was like, "Okay, we gotta," and that shows you that these
Yeah.
providers are people. And
That is so powerful because, And I'm so thankful that you're doing a podcast like that, because this is loads of golden nuggets and wisdom that you're giving people. Because I think when you get diagnosed with anything,
Right.
um, they're like, oh, they're the expert. And we're not downplaying doctors, physicians, therapists, nothing like that. But I think what's important that people who are ill miss is that you are your own advocate,
Say it again.
and you have to advocate for yourself, and don't be afraid. Like, don't sit back and be afraid to say something, because even though they are trained, they're not trained in your body. You live
Exactly.
with your body 24/7,
Right.
so you're the only one that can give them the blueprint of what's going on, what's
Right.
happening, and you have to stand firm in that. And that's something that I learned, that no, I'm going to advocate for myself because no one else is. Of course, my
Exactly.
husband was, and I'm like, no. And I would say no to, ideas and suggestions and recommendations. No, give me the information and I'll get back with you. I
Right.
would tell them, hey, I need to think about it. Me and my husband need to pray about it, and I'll get back with you.
Yeah.
You're not going to just tell me, anything. So there was a boldness and a courage that came with me learning how to be my own advocate.
And so, you know what's pretty amazing to hear, and what's beautiful, when I think about women who look like you and I, and the
Yeah,
phrase that kind of comes, it can come about Black women in different spaces. What I love is that it's like we don't always hear about when we use our boldness in this positive way, when we hear
thank
the
you.
right. And
Oh,
so
yes.
what I'm hearing is, hey, I use my boldness and my assertiveness. And if I had to be aggressive a little bit, I use it in this space because nobody knows what it feels like to be in my body. And I
Absolutely.
commend you and I thank you. And I think sometimes because the face is changing, I think, right?
Yeah,
I think Black and brown women need to hear that, is that don't be
absolutely.
fearful because the media shows us as aggressive or
Yes.
these negative connotations. There's a
Yes.
reason that we're bold. There's a reason that
Thank
we
you.
have to be assertive. And in this space of medicine, you got to be that way because you can't always follow the direction. Because you just said, my neurologist back in was like, they didn't know. You came to
Yeah.
Arizona, like, hey, we have to increase,
Yeah.
and instantly you felt different.
Instantly, just from a vitamin supplement, Marsha.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, so what could my body be experiencing if I would just add the right supplements in my life, which now I have, and
Yeah.
I feel, so much better. And I share it with people. I share it with my family members. Hey, are you taking vitamin D?
Yes.
Because one thing that the neurologist said here, my neurologist that I just love so much, he said every human being has to have a vitamin D supplement, whether you are sick or not sick. And I said, are you serious? He
Yes.
said, absolutely.
Yep.
And another amazing, really surprising fact for us Black and brown women was that now with MS, there is a stat that says that Black women experience being diagnosed more than our white counterparts. We are the leading race for being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, more than any ethnicity. And that blew my mind. And I found that out doing some advocacy. And I'm like, and I'm doing all of this advocacy work. I'm, going to Capitol Hill. I'm, in Arizona, and then I was in DC in March for the public policy conference. Also advocating for all of these different policies. And I'm like, I can count on my hand how many of us was there. And it was heartbreaking because I don't think we know.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to have you back on, and we got to talk about policy around it because it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
For me now, when you talked about the drug and I,
Yes.
I'm blown away from that, and so I am definitely gonna have you back on so we can talk about what does that
I
look
would
like? How
love
does
to.
Yeah, how
Yeah.
does one advocate? And so just closing up, what's a one gem? Because you've been, like I said, you've been dropping them. What's one thing, if anybody, they've taken, if they, you know how sometimes we listen and we have this one takeaway. What's one thing you
Yeah.
want to leave the audience with today?
Mhm. You are stronger than you think.
Mm.
And everything that you need to be your best self is already inside of you. And you need to just tap into it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Everybody, she will be back on, so stay tuned.
Yay!
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the next time.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you.